But my client's perception is what matters here, and he stands by his actions. I think at the end of this case, he's going to walk away as an innocent man.
Mr. Anderson, the DA said that they arrested your client to not show special treatment in this case. What's your response to that?
I've been involved in probably 100 or more police shootings. This is the first one anyone's ever been arrested. This is not preferential treatment. This is election year tactics.
What do you think about the fact that body-worn footage won't be released by the DA or Boston Police Department?
That it will not be released?
That's what we just heard.
I favor that. I mean, at some point, we need transparency. The police need transparency that the community can trust them. But while this is under investigation, I think it should be kept secret and let the process play out. And at some point, we'll have transparency.
Folks, one of the most important things that you need to hear from the rank and file officers that are with us and the family that was here with the officer is these men and women come to work every day to keep Boston the safest city in the country. The very freedoms that we all enjoy, you and us together, are because of these men and women behind me. And they come in every night to protect the citizens of Boston. And in a split second, they have to make a determination on what to do. We heard the DA's representative upstairs talk about the officer used verbal commands, utilized his taser, then went up the force continuum. What we're looking for, folks, is compliance. I don't hear anybody ever talking about when do we get back to the way years used to be. When a law enforcement officer comes on scene and they're giving you verbal commands and they're giving you instructions, it's a two-way street. Compliance is a must. Now, I'm not there to pass blame to the individual. It is a complete tragedy that we're here today even talking about this. It really is. But we have an individual that's no stranger to the criminal justice system. Again, I'm talking and I'm giving you facts from the DA themselves. It's an individual that's been arrested multiple times. It's an individual that knows what it is to follow verbal commands. That's a must out on the street. When an officer in uniform is asking you to see your hands, to shut the car off, to put it in park, please help them. No officer ever wants to take a life, ever wants to discharge their firearm. But we carry that piece of equipment to keep you and your family safe, and we do a very good damn job at it. The facts show it. That's why we're the safest city in America. So we're here very strongly to tell you that we back our officer, and at the end of the day, Attorney Anderson is right. The facts are going to come out. That officer was in fear of his partner. It's very easy on Monday morning to take a look at a body camera and try to determine what an officer felt from your point of view. No one here knows how it is to be a man or woman in uniform. None of you know what it is to have your life, your partner's life, or some other innocent victim, possibly their life in your hands, and have to make that determination in a split second. Very easy again on Monday morning to take a look at a body camera and say, an officer said this, his camera shows this, we disagree with that officer and how he or she felt. Yeah, that's easy. Try being the officer in 2 seconds to process all of that information, to give it verbal commands, to pull a taser, to go to his next piece of equipment, and make the right decision all the time. I guarantee you, you have no idea how that officer felt. We do. We've made that determination many, many times, and unfortunately, we're here today with a tragedy. Yes.
Larry, how are the officers feeling now about doing their jobs, having seen a fellow officer get arrested so quickly?
I probably can't answer you correctly for the 50-odd officers that are standing behind me, but why wouldn't we second-guess our job? How can we not go to work knowing that we gave verbal commands, we pulled a taser, we went up the use of force continuum? Our own Boston Police Commissioner is quoted in the paper saying that they gave verbal commands, the individual backed his car up multiple times, crashing into the police car and putting the officers in danger. That's our own Boston Police Commissioner. Why wouldn't we be outraged? Why wouldn't these men and women think a second thought now while they're out there protecting citizens? Every man and woman here that's a parent or a father or a relative has the right to go home at the end of the day the way they came to work, happy and healthy. And we do a very good job at that. Yes, sir.
Larry, can you just talk about the perception? The report says the car was going back and forth, trying to free itself from the curb and the cruiser. What kind of perception is that for an officer? Does he have to necessarily be in the path like they say he wasn't? I mean, just the fact the car's jostling around?
I'll be careful not to tarnish the case as it moves forward. Will I answer that? But every individual officer is different, and every scenario is different. Sometimes the car is backing up and Yeah, he's backing up down Dudley Street and you're 25 feet away. You have plenty of time to move out of the way. Other times you don't. Sometimes the car is moving faster. Sometimes you're stuck in between parked vehicles. Every situation is different, so I can't answer not seeing the body camera and not being on scene that night what those officers were feeling and where they were situated, and how much danger they were in.
But is perception different for each officer?
But perception is different for each officer is where I was going. And what might terrify me, maybe this officer handles it differently. That's where I went in on the Monday morning quarterbacking. It's very easy, folks, to take a look at a body camera and try to determine that, you know what, I think that guy was standing far enough away from the car that maybe he shouldn't have thought his life was in fear. I'm here to stress to you, I've done this job. I've been a policeman for 31 years. My perception and my life being in fear is much different than the district attorney who's sitting behind a desk Monday morning watching a video.
Larry, are you claiming this is a political maneuver by Kevin Hayden?
I'm not going to take any shots at the district attorney. I'm not going to pretend that this is political in any way. I had a brief moment with the DA in the hallway. I expressed what I'm expressing to you here. It makes the job of these men and women so much more difficult to be dragged in here a few days after an incident happened when clearly we all read the newspaper and the Boston Police Department can't adhere to the regular post-commission requirements in 90 days, 180 days, 360 days, but yet they could drag our officer in here a few days later because somebody's opinion of their body camera says they should have acted differently. Normally, you don't hear me talk like this. Many of you I've had interviews with before. Is this an outrage? Absolutely it is. Should our men and women feel outraged and discouraged from doing their job like they do? Yeah, unfortunately, that's how we're feeling.
So do you think maybe they shouldn't shoot at this point?
I'll grab everybody, don't worry.
Councilor Anderson, when InCorp was trying to talk about this guy, he was out in 4 different open cases, some involved guns. That was kind of dismissed by the judge, but does that play into it too, the perception?
I don't know that the officers knew that about the individual. And listen, if somebody's been arrested 19 times and they're out on bail and they're driving around the street and they're confronted by a law enforcement officer in full uniform and they're given verbal commands, please comply with those verbal commands. We're not judging anybody if we have information on them or not. We're judging them for the crime or the scene that's happened at that point in time. And if the officer's telling you to shut off the car, please shut off the car. If they're telling you to show them your hands, show them your hands. That police officer is in fear of their life just as much as the person that's being stopped or questioned might be in fear of the officer. But again, it's about compliance. It's a two-way street. Help us, help you. Help us keep everybody safe, the men and women in uniform and the people that we're dealing with. Yes, miss.
What do you think of the ADA's comments and statements in court that firing his weapon endangered the other officer on scene?
That's part of my Monday morning quarterbacking, and I'm kind of irritated with it, as you could see. For the assistant district attorney to try to convince you or anybody else about how that officer felt, what that officer saw, when his body camera in his chest is what they're looking at, is preposterous to me. They can't possibly know how that police officer felt. And just because the camera shows an officer on the other side of the car with the totality of the circumstances that were taking place does not mean that the other officer actually had him in his vision. So we're in total disagreement with that, and it's upsetting for somebody else that was not there to try to add their opinion in 2 days, 3 days, 4 days later.
Maybe this is a misunderstanding, but the report is written by a police officer that says that there was probable cause that this was manslaughter. How do you respond to that? That's a police officer, not a... I understand the Monday morning quarterbacking from the DA's office, perhaps, but is this police officer? How do you characterize that? The fact that they came to that conclusion as well.
Yep, I can answer that. Those police officers came to that conclusion and wrote that report based upon the investigation of the district attorney's office that night on scene, and it is part of the protocol and the process for the police officers to document it in the report. But I guarantee you that's the opinion of the district attorney, as you heard upstairs.
This is the department that's required at community policing.
I'm sorry.
This is the department that's required at community policing. Are you concerned, a man did die in this situation, are you concerned about the relationship between Boston Police and the community based on this incident?
I'm not concerned about that at all. Listen, we are the poster child for community policing across the country. Let's not forget that President Obama himself said that you want to talk about community policing, look no further than the Boston Police Department. We're the best in the country, folks. There's a reason why we are the safest city in America, and it's because of these men and women and how they interact on the street. We talk to the general public. We're out there every day. The union officials that are with me, we're out there conversing with the general public. They love our men and women. I don't think it's going to hinder us at all. We're good at what we do.
Is there a message after what, seeing your officer in handcuffs in the courtroom today? Is there a message to the other officers in the Boston Police Department? Don't shoot.
I haven't heard that message, and that message I don't think is what's going to come forth. Unfortunately, there are instances where police officers are faced with life and death situations, their own or that of an innocent bystander, and that is why they carry that weapon.
Can you confirm how long
One second.
it's been since a Boston police officer was arrested and charged with manslaughter for an officer-involved shooting? And what does it say about this as well?
Excuse me, my apologies. I don't know the exact date, but approximately 30 years is the last memory that I have that a police officer has been arrested and charged with such a crime.
Larry, how's Officer O'Malley doing? Were you able to talk to him or his family?
His family was here today with us. They were in the courthouse. They've since left. That's a difficult question for me to answer. I can't pretend to know how Officer O'Malley feels. Looking at him, I'm sure he's depleted, and I'm sure he's second-guessing the entire incident that happened. But he's a strong individual. He has an impeccable young career that he's involved in. It's an unblemished career, and he acted courageously for what he testified to, as you heard. He did not know where his partner was. He was in fear of his partner's life. He gave multiple verbal commands. He tried to utilize his taser, but could not because of the actions of the individual. And unfortunately, we're standing here today with a tragedy and a loss of life.
Is that because the window was up?
The window was partially cracked at one point when the officer was attempting to utilize the taser, from what I understand, upstairs from the district attorney.
And that's why he couldn't use the taser, because the window was marginally up.
I'm going by what the DA said. I have to be careful in the way I answer
Are you
that.
saddened by the arrest today or outraged by the arrest?
Both. We're outraged at the way the arrest took place. You have an individual, again, with an impeccable record that volunteered to go give testimony at Fitted at the Homicide Division. And he could have very easily volunteered to come in here and submit himself to the accusations at hand. And why are we sad on the other side? We're sad because the assistant district attorney and whomever else is involved in this investigation is jumping to conclusions, is scapegoating and utilizing this officer for whatever reason. I'm not calling it political, but to watch the department for 3 decades take their time and do thorough, lengthy investigations, and then in this case, all of a sudden, you have a couple of city councilors that want to look at the body camera and they arrest the police officer. I remember the days of Police Commissioner Bill Evans would invite city councilors upstairs, sit down and view the body camera. Total transparency. Let me say that. The union is not about not being transparent. We're about transparency, but we're about fundamental fairness. Our police officer deserves the same consideration and the same rights that any other citizen would expect and deserves. Plain and simple.
Can you speak about just the danger of shooting at a moving vehicle?
Unfortunately, I don't think that I can talk about that given this case because that's going to come up in the trial in this very instance. I apologize.